أصحاب السعادة والضيوف الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أنا محدثتكم خلود العطيات، ويشرفني ويسعدني أن أرحب بكم اليوم باسم مؤسسة سلامة بنت حمدان آل نهيان في برنامج منتدى بعنوان الفن العام والتغيير الإجتماعي. برنامج منتدى هو منصة للابتكار من أجل تبادل الأفكار الجديدة التي تساهم بدورها في تعزيز التفكير الإبداعي والمعرفة والنقاشات المفيدة. وتتناول محاضرتنا الليلة الدور الهام الذي توليه التعابير الثقافية والإبداعية في إحداث تغيير اجتماعي حقيقي ومستدام، وتتيح الفنون مساحات ومنابر عامة للمشاركة والتعاون وبناء المجتمع، مما يساهم في مجابهة التحديات التي تواجه أفراد المجتمع، وذلك عبر إتاحة الفرصة لهم للمشاركة في الأعمال والتعابير الفنية والثقافية لخلق أفكار جديدة ورؤى وإيجاد فرص للنقد البناء وإلهام الأفراد. وتستضيف هذه المحاضرة كلا من الفنان والنحات الأمريكي رالف هلمك، والفنانة والمصممة الإماراتية زينب الهاشمي، والفنان الفرنسي التونسي السيد. Your Excellencies and honored guests, I am Khulud Al-Atiyat, and I will be your host and moderator for tonight's talk. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Muntada. Muntada is an innovative platform for sharing new ideas that stimulate creative thinking, learning, and active discussion. This Muntada explores cultural and creative expressions as a means to effect deep and lasting social change. Public art often provides a platform for public reflection, collaboration, and community building. Through public art, we can challenge many of our society's deepest assumptions, build upon the power of artistic creation and expression to spark new ideas, invoke critical thinking, inspire people, and create visions. Our talk tonight will feature Ralph Helmek, an American sculptor and public artist, Zainab al-Hashimi, an Emirati conceptual artist and designer, and El Cid, a French-Tunisian artist whose work incorporates traditional Arabic calligraphy. محدثنا الأول الفنان رالف هلمك يستخدم في أعماله النحتية العديد من المواد المختلفة، ويعتمد في أسلوبه على التصور الذهني، حيث يستخدم في بعض الأحيان ظاهرة إعادة التشكيل والمعروفة ب anamorphosis، وهي ظاهرة بصرية يمكن من خلالها التعرف على الصورة الأصلية عبر النظر إليها من موقع محدد. Our first speaker is Ralph Helmek, who works in various materials to create large-scale public sculptures. His works play on human perception and often employs anamorphosis, an optical phenomenon where images are resolved from a precise perspective. Please join me in welcoming Ralph to the stage.
Is my microphone working? Great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here at Muntada and to share the stage with El Cid as a naib. I've devoted my career to public art, and whenever I think about a new commission, I think about two things. First two steps are the audience. Who is the audience? Is it the entire general public, or is there some subset of the public? Maybe it's people at an airport, maybe it's scientists, maybe it's students at a college. The second thing I think about is how can they perceive and experience the artwork, just biological terms. They experience with their eyes, how close, how far away can we get to it? Can you circumnavigate a public art piece? So I thought I would choose 4 projects to show you this evening that may relate to social change more than some of the other projects I have. And I'm going to show you three courthouses and one school for criminal justice. When we experience art, this is typically how we think about it. You know, one person looking at an artwork and having, hopefully, a profound experience. But something can happen when we experience art as a group. Here we have a slide of about 200 people looking at the Mona Lisa behind bulletproof glass at the Louvre, the Paris Louvre, okay? And there's something about it, there's something collective that makes this experience a little bit different than the individual and the group in an airport, let's say. So all of my projects, I'm working on my first international projects now, but all of my projects in the United States. And my first courthouse was over 15 years ago. So the audience, who is my audience going to be here? The people at the courthouse that has judges, there's lawyers, there's defendants, there's courthouse staff. But the most dynamic subset of the audience, the one I thought I would focus on with my artwork, is the jury. In the American judicial system, it's frequent for many cases, especially important cases, to be decided by 12 citizens, non-professional people who don't know each other, who convene to go through the very challenging and uncomfortable, sometimes unsuccessful process of evaluating and sitting in judgment of a fellow citizen. So I decided to really physically use the jury. I chose 12 citizens from this city, East St. Louis, Illinois, and I made traditional clay and then plaster portraits of these people, 6 men, 6 women, different ages and ethnicities, by traditional means. At this time, I had an early 3D laser scanner, which allowed me to sculpt these portraits at a convenient size and then play with the scale. So I scanned the plaster head on the right, and I could reduce it through a resin cast, then a pewter casting, and then I patinated it. So I could miniaturize this after doing the work originally. But it worked in the other dimension, too, or the other direction. I could take a subset of one of these jurors and actually enlarge it. And so I made, in this skylit atrium, 2 12-foot tall portraits that are made up of tiny heads. The one on the right is an African-American male. This is one of the 12 jurors who are represented everywhere else. And the one on the left is a Caucasian female. So it's about trying to encourage dialogue, about considering the other person, about expressing and listening. If you look really closely in the middle of her head, you'll see a silver version of the head opposite. And conversely, in the very center of his head, you'll see a silver version of her. So it's meant to graphically, sculpturally encourage this hope for informed consensus. The second is for a piece I did a couple of years ago for the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City. In any kind of deliberation, I think time and justice are very closely linked. If a case just drags out forever, or you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, or sometimes there's a rush to judgment where there hasn't been adequate time to really consider the complexities of the situation. So I decided to really address that because this is an educational institution. I and my team actually went on eBay mostly and acquired hundreds of secondhand timepieces. So there's 692 timepieces hanging in this 2-story space, which is near the entry of the college. You see, it's a 2-story space. It's in a computer lab on the main floor, and these all hang up in the upper half of the piece. The windows you see on the upper right are street level, so if you're passing by, you can look through and see the hundreds of clocks. It wasn't just any clock. You know, I curated them just like I was a painter developing a palette. All sorts of timepieces. Now we're on the main entry. This is street level, and we're about to enter into the main entrance to the school. So you see what I hope is a chaotic but pleasing array of all these timepieces. What does it mean? Well, Okay, there's time and justice. I guess that's pretty straightforward. But as you get closer, they start to align optically into some kind of order, until when you finally are about to enter the front door, if you look to your right, you'll see the scales of justice nested among this constellation of timepieces. So it's only from that precise point. This is the anamorphosis Claude was talking about. The third of the four pieces for another courthouse. This is in Denver, in the center of the United States. And this piece, Convergence, is in a courthouse in a glass-lit atrium. It's actually a terminus of one of the main streets of downtown Denver. And I think one of, maybe we'll touch on this later, but one of the things that public art can do is be a civic icon. And so there's this, it acts actually at night, almost like a lantern. And it's in a 5-story atrium, and I wanted to make something that would occupy a lot of space but not be massive, so it wouldn't block light. I felt light was very, very important in a place that dealt with justice. So I created this filigree, and also to create a kind of space within a space. So everybody that goes through this courthouse passes underneath this sculpture Convergence before they go through security and to serve on a jury. And so as one passes under it, one can look up into this vortex, maybe anticipating this hopefully transformative experience of being on a jury and sitting in judgment of one's peers. By now, you've probably guessed what the elements are here. Each row has 12 portraits in them, but they're doubled. So I was trying to figure out how to create a conversation, an implied conversation. So the woman on the lower left actually is talking to a person on the left screen. She turns around and speaks to another individual. He, in turn, is doubled. So that forms this, circular conversation that goes around. Each layer has 24 outlines. As one ascends and looks at it from other floors, you start to get this overlap where you look through one and see another. So it becomes this, again, visual pentimento. It's a implied conversation. It's like we're all in this together. Let's try to do something well, even though it's difficult. Until finally, near the top, they overlap so much, it becomes this web, this interconnected whole. Finally, I'm showing you a piece I did in Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, it's in a courthouse at the 4-story atrium. And again, I don't do only people and only little portraits. My other work has lots of variety in it. But in this, I wanted, again, to use the population of Charlotte. But in this case, I wanted to expand it beyond the jury pool into the entire community. So there's 2,400 tiny heads hanging in this space. There's infants, there's toddlers, they're very old people. But I created, out of this 2,400, a precise demographic reflection of the community, of that county. So there's roughly 50% men and women. Ethnicity is roughly, actually quite accurately represented when I made this piece. And we talked about time before. As one enters, there's this whole cloud of heads. So I decided I really want to promote time and make a kinetic piece that almost didn't seem kinetic. It's not what we usually associate with kinetic art. That is something where we're admiring the graceful movement and, or else frenetic movement. Because I felt what's going on in this building really needs to have us slow down, have us get out of our normal ways of thinking, because we're doing something pretty special. So I made this kinetic piece. There's 1,200 motors in the ceiling, and once a minute for every minute of the work week, which in the United States is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, one head descends very, very slowly over that minute. At 9:02, a second head descends. And eventually, they start to form a large portrait. In this case, a Latino male. That goes up to 1 o'clock on Wednesday, which is the exact center of the work week. At 1:01, one head starts to ascend back up into the cloud, and that continues until Friday when the artwork takes the weekend off, just like everybody in it. Okay. So when one enters this courthouse, one sees one of your fellow citizens staring down at you. The whole dynamic, I think, about social change involves what? It involves individuals and it involves a culture or community. And that dynamic is why social change can happen or not happen successfully. Here's a stop action that covers through 2 weeks of this. Again, the actual kinetic motion itself is barely discernible. Most people don't even realize what's happening. So here we have, over the course of probably about Tuesday afternoon, reaching Wednesday, and now it's Wednesday afternoon, and everything's accelerating into the cloud. This was a Caucasian middle-aged male. The piece is about to take the weekend off, but we'll pick it back up. And now it's Monday afternoon again. The title, Persistence of Vision, refers to another optical phenomenon where from very, very partial information, we can compose, our minds want to compose a recognizable whole. And this is an African-American woman who's staring down at you. This goes on, different person every week. So over the course of 10 weeks is the way it's programmed right now. So again, public art and social change, how can we make it work? It's an ongoing process, isn't it? But I think it does involve the individual, and it involves the community. As individuals, we have a responsibility to our larger culture and our community. And the community and the larger culture has a responsibility to the individual. It's hard work to keep that dynamic working well. It's ongoing work, and it's work that never ends. One doesn't ever finally arrive at social change. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Wonderful topic, wonderful pieces, and I'm sure we're going to go into more details later during the Q&A session. متحدثتنا الثانية زينب الهاشمي هي فنانة ومصممة إماراتية متخصصة في الفن المفاهيمي والأعمال التركيبية، كما أنها فنانة تحب التجريب حيث تستخدم مواد وتقنيات جديدة في أعمالها الفنية المعاصرة وتستمد مواضيعها من التقاليد الثقافية من خلال التعاون مع الحرفيين من المحيط الإقليمي والعالمي أيضاً. Our second speaker, Zainab Al-Hashmi, is an Emirati conceptual artist and designer, specializing in site-specific installations, spatial art, and modern public sculptures. Often experimenting with new materials and techniques, she creates strikingly contemporary works that draw on and reinterpret symbols and traditions through collaborating with different regional and international artisans and makers. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Zainab Al-Hashmi.
Hello, everyone. Is it working? Can you hear me? It's on. Okay. I'm very happy to be here with all of you, and especially with the artist Ralph and Seed, to talk about what we've been, working on as what is looked as a public art. I would just like to talk a little bit about the things that I've been working on in the past few years, and it started with the importance of what I do as an artist and the platform that I'm given as an artist, as a contemporary artist and what I would like to include in that sort of platform. And it started with things that are pop culture, things that are iconic that I could see happening around me in the art scene and also in my culture. And then I found out that I have so much passion for the artisans and makers in the region, and how the artisans in the region were, in a way, always looked as a traditional they're in a traditional space, and how I would, me as an artist, I could collaborate with them. So collaboration was something that I've started with and that I completely enjoy, because I think when you collaborate with other people, you could give yourself not just the thought of your own ideas, but introducing also others' ideas in your work. And of course, collaboration is also very important when you are also, you are giving others the credit of working with you. So as an artist, I felt, because I don't draw or paint or do things by myself, the importance of giving credit to artisans and makers that I work with was something that I enjoyed, and I would also introduce in a contemporary and art platform. I actually included a lot of slides, so I'm going to select a few projects that I'd like to share with you. So these are one of my first installations, and it was actually showing first in Capital D, which is a gallery at Al Qoz. It was in 2013, and I believe it was, if any of you are familiar with the Circal Avenue, it was still in the process of happening, so there wasn't much of an art scene in Al Qoz, other than, if I remember, it was Courtyard and Third Line, if any of you are familiar with those galleries. So Capital D offered myself and a couple of artists to have some of the pieces showing, and because I work with site-specific, I usually observe the surrounding, I observe the environment that my work is going to take place in. Another thing is that I also look at the history of the space, and I like to sort of engage conversations and dialogue in terms of what does this space mean to the people who are surrounding this area. And I remember, as I was used to walk, I was used to drive to the gallery, I used to pass by a lot of the concrete mix factories, and as a curious artist and a person to work with different materials, I really want to work with the material of concrete, but then what is it that I want to show in this gallery was, I like to play with the terms of also engaging the public of not just an art audience, but just the public in what could be looked as art, what could be art. So I remember having so many different thoughts about what is it that I want to create with concrete, up till I thought we could just play with the scale of a concrete block. And playing with scale gives also the audience this sort of interest in getting to know more about the art. But as much as it's an interactive sort of and a playful sort of installation, the public had no idea that they're going to drive into an industrial area, find out where is the gallery, and then get into a gallery space to find just another concrete block as they were driving through Al Qoz. So it was very industrial, and it had to become, the piece had to reflect on the location of the gallery and then we moved so then again it was specifically in a gallery. It was showing there for a couple of months, but then this is the beauty about the kind of work that I enjoy doing, which is basically relocating the installation and then seeing how it reacts and engages with the public. So I remember, I think this was in 2015, where we moved the concrete block in DIFC, and it just made complete sense to me, because from an industrial area like Al Qoz, then it was the DIFC, Dubai International Financial Center, where we could look at it as an example of the location of Dubai and how the whole transformation in happening in the city, in the region, reflects as looking at the city as another concrete jungle, just like many of the developed cities having so much construction happening with with those kind of things. So this is, again, a reminder of the beginning of materiality, which is the concrete material. And of course, the people who were engaged here to create the work with me were just, I've selected a couple of people from a construction sites and asked them to create this work with me. I like to also, as much as what the kind of skills that they have are very much into construction, I try to show them that this is not another sort of piece that will come together in a construction site, but I kind of show them the importance of that this is looked as a design piece, as an art piece, that there is value for that piece when it's put in a certain location. So yeah, again, I think moving locations is very important when it comes to a public art, because this is a very public area, and we had the ability to actually have the piece inside the gallery or outside the gallery, and I always try to have my work outside for the four walls of a gallery, an exhibition, although it's still within the art night and the DIFC art platform, but then it's just like, and it could, people who work there don't have the necessity to get inside the gallery, but they could actually just pass by the work and be very curious about it and maybe engage with it. And I remember the title of the work was Monolith Pillar, but then I thought to also engage it into social media, so we called it the Big Block, and it was hashtagged, and people were actually so excited to take pictures with it and inside it, and it was very sort of like a nice sort of fun project for the people. I will just skip this, and we'll see if we have time for it later on, but this is, again, going back to working with artisans and makers. And every project that I have, I see, I try to think of and seek what type of makers that I would like to work with on this project. What kind of, because again, when I visualize installation or a piece of work, the material is very open. It could be several things that that could take the direction of what makers I'd like to work with. So over here, this is just to show you the kind of process that I go through sometimes, which is me seeking and reaching out for the makers that I work with. And this is Al Jaddaf, which is a very known area in Dubai, and they are known for boat repairing. And I remember going to Al Jaddaf and just trying to get inspired and looking at what's happening over there in that area, which is also, this is another opportunity as an artist, as someone who wants to engage with the public and the community and the culture, to visit those kind of locations and sort out what sort of collaboration I'd like to engage. So this was an art piece that was showing last year in Abu Dhabi Art. The art piece was called Camel Flage, which is similar to camouflage, but I've used the camel hair, camel hides, to create this installation. Again, it was very, not just site-specific, but also theme-specific in a way, which was, I look at what is the theme of the project and the exhibition that I was showing my work at. And I remember the theme was about how art can be functional, and is art when there's an artwork and there's so much design solution is put into it, does that mean the art becomes an object or a functional piece rather than just an artwork or a fine artwork piece? And I think I was, as much as I was interested in the theme, I was actually looking at the material that I'll be working with, which is the camel hair and the camel leather. And I was looking at the functionality of the camel itself and the functionality of the camel through our history in the past several years. And looking at the functionality of the camel and seeing how important the camel was in our life and in our culture, in our history, I remember researching about this and knowing how each piece of the camel, since when the camel is used for the nomads traveling and also used as a transportation, but not only that, the camel milk was also used for, as a way of nutrition and a form of the beauty and richness of what the camel can offer. But then even after the process of having the leather produced by the camels that were used for special occasioned feasts, the camel leather was used in several ways to have them used as a it was more of a commodity. And I was using this as to show that even in an art environment, in an art platform, the camel leather could be looked as the functional artwork. And over here, this is just it looks like an abstract desert, but it also can look like an abstract camel. As you come close to it, it looks like sand dunes. As you come closer to it, you realize that it's actually made of camel hair. And the functionality over here, that the artwork was able to be engaged with the public and sat on. In most places, you realize that you can't touch the art and you can't sit on the art, or you can't really do much with the art. But in this project, it was very important to engage with the public and the community, to actually being able to sit on the artwork. Again, this project can also relocate itself and take the shape of the environment that it's located at. So this is just a very few of the many pictures that people were actually excited to sit on the artwork. Actually, we had a sign next to the artwork saying, "You can sit on the art," and many people couldn't read that it said, "You can sit on the art." They read that "You can't sit on the art," and that I find that very funny, because it's again of what we're kind of used to getting to know. So this was actually my first public temporary installation. That was for Dubai Design Week, and I remember this was the first collaboration between artists and the Design Week, and then the investors who are going to give us, who is going to sponsor this, and also give us the space, the public spaces in the city. This was in City Walk, and again, this was a series of artworks that I've been creating within different materials, but over here I just chose my medium, inspired by the construction movement in the city. And I remember the location of City Walk gives you the sight and view of so much construction happening through the skyline of Dubai. And I remember looking at the cranes so many times, and the structure of the crane, which reminds me of the trusses over here as well. And it's a very strong structure. So I just there's a whole conceptual idea behind the work over here, which is the whole truss. It's basically the material I worked with, which is the truss. But again, the word trust, which is I included just one more letter to show that we can trust the land we live at. We can trust the foundation and the formation of this transformation in the city. So they look like sails, but the whole boat is the rest of the city. Again, the people who were engaged over here are, again, I collaborated with labor workers to create the artwork and introduce them into not just the construction work, but also into what is looked as an artwork. Again, it looks very much like a work in process, but it's a finalized artwork. Okay, I will just skip this one because I'm not sure how much time. So finally, last month or 2 weeks ago was Dubai Design Week, and this was my first international collaboration with Swarovski, and it was a very long 10-month process of work and knowing exactly what is it that I would like to create with the various thousands types of crystals that Swarovski has. Not that they forced me to work with crystals, but then it had to be somehow inspired by their crystals and the use of crystals. My site for this the location, again, as a site-specific installation, was very important. And I remember that we wanted to engage the design district area with different multiple installations. And I remember it's very difficult to choose a location when you've got a certain artwork, but you need to it's part of a teamwork. And you need to, installations in public art is not just the work of an artist, but more of a big team that works and get involved in this sort of process. So I remember telling them that I will be creating a kaleidoscopic machine. Again, how it would look like, what sort of crystals it would have, that was very open for me to work on in the long process. And I remember, because it was a public piece, because it was in an outdoor area, because it was a very public and culture event that included so many people from the community. It was a very open event, not just for people to come from the art audience, but just like another open fair. I remember telling them that the artwork is going to remain from the beginning of the day until the end of the night, and I would like something to somehow change color. And I remember we sort of find out how we could create a very special crystal that changes over with the color of the light and the natural color of the sun. So over here, you'll see this kind of dynamic and bold structure of which would look like a beehive or cells, but it's built into so many different levels and dimensions that it changes the way it looks as people move around it. And they've got different locations for the kaleidoscope, which is the triangular stainless steel, as you can see in different locations of it. There's so many different dialogue and engagement for the public, so they could look through the kaleidoscope and look at the other side of the city, multiplied in different ways. They could look at the sculpture from a distance and, could change its color. They can move around the sculpture and could also change the way it looks like because of its multi-layered. And they can also face each other from the kaleidoscopes from both sides, and they could engage that dialogue of communication. And I think I've been working on several types of what is looked as site-specific installation and public art, and I always try to engage the public, engage the community, especially that I've grew in the art scene while it was growing and still developing. And it was very important for me to engage so many different varieties of the community to understand and raise awareness of what is art and what is the importance of art in the region. By having those sort of engaging the artisans, engaging the different people that I work with and the public in those sort of forms to raise awareness again. And we'll see what's going to come next, but I guess it's always important to understand that public art needs not just the artwork of the artists themselves, but also it engages so many people in the community, including investment, sponsoring art, public art, and also the big teamwork that so many people are involved in the end, through the vision and the perspective of the artist. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. Again, you bring up a lot of topics that I can't wait to talk about, such as public engagement and the audience experience with what is referred to as public art. And now, our last speaker, Seed, is a French-Tunisian artist whose work incorporates traditional Arabic calligraphy. He has already left his indelible mark on buildings all over the world, creating dialogue and promoting tolerance, as well as changing global perceptions of what Arabic means. متحدثنا الأخير هو السيد، وهو فنان تونسي فرنسي. أعماله مستوحاة من الخط العربي وترك بصمة إبداعية تزدان بها شوارع وأوجهة المباني في المدن حول العالم، ويسعى من خلال أعماله لخلق مساحات للحوار وتعزيز مفهوم التسامح، بالإضافة إلى تغيير المفاهيم العالمية حول الهوية العربية. Please join me in welcoming Seed to the stage.
So the question that I get asked most of the time is what I'm enjoying the most, about what I do. And beyond, like the artistic process itself, I think what I love the most is the human experience and, all this little story that I will tell you like during this talk. So at the beginning when I started, it was just a quest of identity. Born and raised in France from Tunisian parents, it was hard for me to define myself as French and also as Tunisian. So I felt I had to make a choice. So I just ran into my Arabic roots. So I started taking class in France to learn how to read and write Arabic. And then later on, I discovered Arabic calligraphy. And ironically, Arabic calligraphy a few years later brought me back and made me accept my French identity, something that I totally rejected before. So at the beginning, it was just writing my name in Arabic, El Cid, and step by step, I got inspired by the Arabic proverbial tradition. When you erase the name and you just leave a message. And I start using quotes, and then I start traveling to create my artwork. And then I felt there was this need of making sure that what I'm writing were like relevant to the people of the place where I was painting. And experiencing this made me feel and realize actually that Arabic script has this universal beauty and power that anybody around the world can relate to it. You don't need to be like an Arab person or even being connected to the Arabic world to just feel this emotion. So I always make sure that everything that I'm writing, because writing messages actually is the essence of my artwork, so everything that I'm writing has this connection with the community where I'm painting, but mainly has this universal dimension, so anybody around the world can relate to it. So traveling from place to place and leaving my mark made me realize actually the power of public art in a certain way. And I realized that, the impact can be totally different, depending on the place I'm painting. It depends also on the community where I'm creating my artwork. For example, the picture behind me is a minaret of Jara Mosque in Gabes. This is the city where I'm originally from in Tunisia. And in 2012, when I did this project, I just wanted to create an art piece in my hometown, and the mosque was built in '94. For 18 years, nobody touched, nobody ever painted the minaret, so it was great. So I just wanted to paint a mural in my hometown, and so this was there. And so we approached the imam and we approached the mayor of the city, and both of them were really happy to welcome the idea. And Gabes is a southern city in Tunisia, totally forgotten. It's a beautiful place, but because of the precedent regime, it was left on the side. And after doing this project, it made international news. It went everywhere, and it was interesting to see just an art piece, just a painting and a building could just bring back the light into a city that has been totally forgotten. And then beyond this, bring light into a city, this is the connection that you create also with people. I've been able to meet people and see how the fact of painting and creating artwork in the street, in the public space, is totally different of, for example, what we can see here in art fair. Here, you bring people to the art, when actually outside you bring the art to the people. Now, for example, I got a wall. I was painting a small wall in Tunisia once while I was doing this project called Lost Walls a few years ago. And I remember this, I entered this small town called Sarah, and there was a wall at the entrance of the city. So I asked these people sitting in a cafe who the wall was belonging to. And this man told me, this is my wall, so you can, tfaddal, you can paint on it. And when I was almost done, I think maybe 75% of the wall, this old man came and he was super mad and told me are you crazy? Why are you painting on my house? I'm not dead for you to do this. And I was like, no, this guy told me this is his house. He gave me the authorization. He said, no, this is mine and you need to erase that. So I was like, okay, samahni ammu, sorry, uncle. And then I said, look, just let me finish. I'll take my picture and then I will erase it. And the funny thing is, like, maybe like an hour after that, he sent his nephew, and the nephew was like, actually, my uncle liked it, and he asked you if you cannot make another one and leave this one, like, don't erase this one, you know. So that's, you know, that's the process of it. And this is what I feel amazing, you know, about painting in the street. Because, for example, in Tunisia or the Arab world, it's easy to paint, you know, like, as you can see, this is Arabic calligraphy, so the connection is easy to convince somebody to paint something. But when you go, like, to a place that has no link, you know, like, with the Arabic culture, it's more difficult. And this is why, like, taking something from a community, taking something from a place, and mixing it, you know, with my art and my culture, create the connection, you know, create the connection with the people, with the community, and like, and create the connection, like, actually this bridge, you know, that between culture. For example, in Brazil, I was once in this favela called Vidigal, and I was just looking for a wall, and actually I didn't find the wall, but I found a rooftop, and there was this woman from the favela called Gabriela Torres Barbosa. She's a poet and a writer. So I used one of her poems that I translated into Arabic, actually from English, but not from Portuguese. And people were intrigued to look at me and think, like, what this guy is doing. And at the end, you know, when I finished and I told them what I was doing, and I told them that was this poem from this person, they totally felt connected to it. And I remember this woman who came with a frame with Arabic writing on it, and she told me, I got this in my house for 20 years, and she didn't know what it was. And actually, that was a verse from Quran. That was Ayatul Kursi. And she asked me, what does it mean? And she said, oh, thank you, finally, like, you came and you told me what was the meaning. So that was all those little stories, you know, and how I think I have my studio. I'm based in Dubai since a year, and I need, as an artist, to go outside to create some art piece in the street, because this is the only story that I can keep. You know, painting in the studio by yourself, creating this process is interesting, but when you don't have this interaction with the public, with the community, I found like art is kind of boring. If it's not shared, there is no point to do it. Same as, for example, this the picture behind me is a piece in a township in Cape Town in South Africa called Philippi. And you know, what I noticed that with art, it's like you can enter any places around the world. You know, I remember when I was on the plane going to Cape Town, I asked a South African guy beside me on the plane if he was how it was to go in a slum, and he told me, no, don't go there, you're gonna get killed, this is super dangerous. And actually not, you know, and this is this whole I don't know, drama that people create on places. You know, inside those places, they're human beings. And me getting there, you know, I just came and saying, hey guys, you know, this is what I do, this is what I'm doing, and can I paint in your neighborhood? And I remember in this neighborhood, I saw it from the highway, and there was a little tiny mosque. So I'm like, okay, that's gonna be my point of entry of the neighborhood. So I get inside it, and then I found this imam, this little South African imam, and I say, I want to paint here. He said, no, you can't. And then I show him my work and say, oh, can you paint something inside the masjid? I'm like, no, actually, that's not what I want to do. And then he called the guy, I remember his name, his name was Forrest. So he came, and I just talked to him 5 minutes. He said, okay, come back on Wednesday, and it's gonna be cool. And some South African people from Cape Town knew that I was going there, and I was like authorized to get there, and they just came with me. And this is, for me, this is the power of public art. And more recently, I've done a project in a place called Manshiat Nasser in Cairo, and it was, Manshiat Nasser is actually the neighborhood of the Cairo garbage collector. And so the idea, again, you know, it was not about the art piece, it was this human experience that we created with the people of the community. And I remember those people that we met, this is Manshiat Nasser behind me, they say, why are you doing this? Why are you coming and painting there? And in this some people say this is the most disgusting place of Egypt, and actually for me not. It was like the most amazing place I painted in my whole life, because of what I lived with those people. So I explained to one of those guys who asked me, why are you doing this? And I say, look, if I come to you and knock at your door and I say, look, can you serve me a cup of tea today? And tomorrow I'm gonna come again. You're gonna invite me for lunch. And at the end of the week, you're gonna say, come play soccer with me. And after 2 weeks, you're gonna invite me to your cousin's wedding. And when I leave, you're gonna be like sad and you're gonna cry. And then you're gonna keep calling me like at least once a month to say how I'm doing. And I say like, you will think I'm crazy if I tell you that. But if I come to your place and I say, look, I'm here to create an art piece. And can I, I'm an artist, I would like to paint your facade. Would you allow me to do this? I think the process is different. You're gonna see me the first day coming and painting. You say, do you want to drink a cup of tea? And then the second day, you're gonna engage a conversation with me. The next day, you're gonna invite me for lunch. And then after like 2-3 weeks, we spend like a month with my team, almost a month with my team in this neighborhood. And I swear we became like those people of this garbage city called Manshiat Nasser became like our family. So this is the purpose of it. It's not about the art piece, because every art piece that I created, and most of them disappeared. One, for example, this one, there's somebody who built his house on top of he built this house actually on top of like the first house on the foreground, right there. So he built like the second floor. It's actually part of the piece. You cannot see it anymore. But everything is made to disappear. So by essence, my work is ephemeral, so it goes at some point. And what I keep in mind is not, like what stays in my mind, in my memories, and in the memories of the people that I met is not the art piece, but it's all those human experience and all those connection and relation that we created together through art. So this is, for me, like the purpose of public art. Thank you.
So we're going to move to the Q&A session. However, we'll set up the stage with some chairs, and that might take just a couple of minutes. So I'll ask you to bear with us through that. But we will try our very best to answer as many questions as possible, although I want to say that we have very limited amount of time. So think of your questions fast. Make sure that you put your hand up real fast. We have a hand here, so this person will get first dibs, but you'll go after I go. I have one question that I have to ask at the beginning, and then we'll get to your question. Can I ask all the speakers to join me on the stage at this point? Can we have one more chair, please? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So in preparing for this talk and kind of looking at your work and looking at the topic overall, there are so many questions that are running through my head and so many things that one can talk about when we talk about public art. But I want to kind of remind everyone that public art is, it's not a new concept. It might be a newly defined concept. It has taken new shapes and different forms. However, people have always kind of experienced public art through sculptures of certain figures, historical figures, or through monuments that are placed throughout the city. And these places kind of become landmarks that affect people, and people recognize them and start to kind of associate with them in a way. And I personally believe that one of the beauties and beautiful things about public art is that it alters kind of the normal dynamic or social dynamic of an urban space. And that's just one of the things it does. But I want to hear from our speakers, and each one of you can take a stab at answering this question. What is it that you believe is the purpose of public art? And Seed, you started alluding to that. But what is the purpose of public art? What is the value of public art? And what is it that each one of you is trying to convey or achieve? What's the narrative that you're trying to put through in your work? And any one of you can start with the answer.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I guess it's really, again, public art is, like you said, it's very related in so many ways to even going back in history, and then seeing how looking at those pieces as a monument, or people associate themselves with the artworks. But I think, again, it's like looking at the different types of fine art or the different type of designers, and then looking at public art as also a multi, like it could vary the way and the way you are trying to engage with the community and the area towards it through your own perspective as an artist, as a designer. So I think it differs, and what I think, in my own opinion, what I'm trying to offer is that as a growing scene, as a growing art and design scene, and also a growing city that just started happening within the past 40 years, I think I'm just trying to spread awareness and engaging the public with what I started calling an interactive artwork, an interactive platform where people are encouraged to engage with the work and not just look at it. Question it, engage with it, touch the work, sit on the work, look through the work, and it gives you that sort of not just an inspiration, but also a way, an innovative way to look at things. And like I said, I always sort of research and study the kind of audience that will be visiting, and especially when you say public, it's really very general. You could get, I would like to inspire the kids in a certain way. I would like to inspire students in certain ways. And then I also work with a lot of, like I said, artisans and artisans and makers, but I also work with architects, I work with engineers, I work with whoever could help me put this thing together and give it to the public in that form.
Thank you, Zainab. Ralph, what else?
I think following up on what Zainab said, one of the big attractions for me as being a public artist is how you create something, you put your heart into it, you put a ton of energy, but it can exist through time. It's a beautiful thing, I mean, it's a little different. I think maybe those of us who like to go to museums, some of my favorite art, I saw that painting and I didn't like it. And then I came back in 2 years and I fell in love with it. You know what? That art didn't change. I changed.
Yeah.
And with public art, it's taking it beyond the museum walls, where it becomes part of the social fabric, and something can have a chance to unfold over years, maybe, if it's a permanent piece. But they exist in time in a different way than other sectors of the art world.
Yeah. And I think that's quite important, because sometimes when artwork lives within the walls of a gallery or a museum, it can be intimidating to some people, and people do have to take that conscious decision to walk into that space to be able to experience it. However, when you just place it in the public realm, you kind of can't escape it, and I think watching the narratives that people start to pull out of a public art piece, that's something completely fascinating, and we can go on and talk about it for a very long time. But Seed, what's your input on this question?
This is what I say during my presentation. It's bringing people to art, and not bringing art to people, not people to art. This is, the interaction is totally different, and you say, it's less intimidating to experience artistic, a piece of art, when it's just outdoor, and you see it, the audience of public, the audience when art is put in the street and the audience in the gallery is totally different, and this is for me the purpose of that, being able to bring art to everyone, democratizing it. This is the most important thing in my eyes.
Thank you. Now the lady I promised. Okay, and we have a question there in the back, if we can get to that question next. Yes, it's working.
This is a question for the first artist, I think that is American, Rolf, right?
Yes.
Okay. The topic of justice, the communication between human beings and all the races is a very delicate topic that bring a lot of questions in my mind, but I just will be focusing two. Normally we see many art, contemporary art in different type of spaces, monumental spaces and all types. And in this type of conversations, it's the first time that I see a sequence of public art in courthouses. So I would like to know, because you transmit perfectly the essence of your work and why these heads, why are there. So I get immediately in contact with the essence of your work, but I wanted to know more about the process. What is to work with different courthouses in different places? Why you get attracted with this type of environment? Because normally, if I'm not wrong, these people are not very attracted directly to art. And what is the involvement or the engagement that you have with these places? That is the question. But the second other point that I wanted to add as a part of this is interesting, the reflection that you bring me about the times of the French Revolution, when the head was cut, and all the heads, and that continues a practice of la guillotine.
Yeah.
So it's amazing because things have been changing radically. In Latin America, where I come from, the political systems have been changed radically too. So the king is no more the king, the president is no more the president, is the people and the force of the people, the people. So what it is the heads coming that are cut also in an injustice, in the way of the injustice between ourselves. So that is my own reflection. What is the presence of the heads? It's very heavy in these courthouses.
Thank you.
Okay, where to start? Let's see. I think
Process.
the process is when one is depicting the human form for a particular audience in particular, I think one has to be. Actually, it's not just in courthouses, it's with any public artwork, because it is a public setting where people are not asking for a public, an art experience. I think one has to enter it with a sense of profound generosity. It doesn't mean it can't be challenging, but I labor in my own work to be generous enough that people who haven't had an exposure to modern art can still have an entry. I don't think public art is for everybody. It's not for every single person. It's like a public swimming pool is not for every single person. My public is that subset of the community that is visually curious and ready to have an art experience. And I think that's valid. I think art can get diluted and watered down if you try to hit every single person, no matter what.
Why courthouses?
Oh, courthouse. I've done 45 projects, and 4 of them happen to be courthouses. No. I would like to. I would like I think that's great. I've done 5 forensic laboratories, where my audience is forensic scientists and people like that. And they're a very distinct audience, they're wonderful as well, Yeah. But, the heads are an interesting thing. The first time I used small heads, I had to think, is this the right thing? I just kept experimenting where I felt comfortable with it.
And if we have time later, I might want to hear also about the process of Zainab that she goes through in Al-Seed. But before that, I want to go to the question from the audience.
Thank you very much for sharing your art with us today. I've got my first question is for Seed. You're well known for having massive art pieces on massive walls. I think the one that took place in Egypt jumps the shark. So my question is, I'm interested in the technicality of it. So how long did it take from you, the planning, the execution? Plus, after you've done your art, were there any kind of complications in the field of security-wise, having specific permissions, some kind of intervention from the government afterwards? I'm interested about the backstory. And second question is for Ralph. I've got a really technical question. I think the last piece you've showed, which is in North Carolina courthouse, where it has the moving parts, am I correct?
Yes,
Was it
descending faces.
Yeah, it was in North Carolina, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Charlotte,
okay,
North Carolina.
so
Correct.
just wanted to know that we're on the same page. So I'm interested to know who maintains that piece. If something happens to it in the future after a year or two, obviously there are small pieces, there are a lot of variables that could happen. So is the courthouse in contract with some maintenance company? It's a very technical question, but I'm just interested to know.
It's a great
Thank
question. Elsie, do you want to answer your question first?
Okay. So so the project like in Cairo took us, my team and I, to 1 year to plan. You know, because the first time I went to Egypt was actually for the project. So it was a personal initiative. There is no sponsor, nothing. It was like a self-funded. And you know, like this neighborhood, they have like this church on top of the mountain, Jbal Muqattam. So it's a Coptic Christian neighborhood. And so what I did, I went to the mountain and I took a picture and I said, okay, I'm gonna go convince the owner of each houses. And then there was a guide from the church who told me there is only one person you need to convince, which is the priest. So we managed to meet this priest, which is like a minister actually in Egypt. And he liked the idea and he just gave his approval. So we flew 4 times back and forth over like 9 months to plan, you know, the whole thing, like the logistic, finding the lift and getting the paint as well in Egypt. It's so complicated. And so we had 12 lifts, and I flew with me 10 people of my team. We got 10 people from the neighborhood helping us. All those lifts, actually, they were hauled by sandbags on the rooftop. And it was difficult to work because, you know, like you have the garbage, which is like the smell is super strong at the beginning, but then you get used to it. You have animals, actually, in floors. So, for example, we got pigs who ate the sandbags, you know, that were holding the lift. I got attacked by a bull at the 4th floor of front of the first building. And yeah, it took us then like 3 weeks and a half actually to finish everything. And then I flew. So there was no governmental authorization. So the government in Egypt didn't know about it. So I posted after like the day I left Egypt. And the funny thing is like the governorate of Cairo, they put on the news the picture of like on TV, the picture of the piece, and they said that they renovated Manshiat Nasser and created some artwork there. So I was flattered actually that they attribute the project to themselves. So yeah. Right.
And to answer your question, I collaborated on that piece with an engineer, a structural engineer. So first we tried to design it in a very robust manner. But your point is well taken. So we put together a cache of funds set aside for the maintenance of the artwork, anticipating that eventually, at some point, it would need to be repaired. And it's needed repair occasionally. I'm not pursuing a lot more motorized things now. I think I can get the effect I want with non-motorized pieces. But I do think any kind of high-tech artwork really has to look good when it's broken. That would be one of my, you know, because sometimes, you know, you have to anticipate that responsibly.
Do we have another question from the audience? Yes. Sorry that I'm pointing at you guys.
Thank you for sharing your artwork. It's all really great to see. My question is about funding. I know that probably, Ralph, a lot of your courthouse pieces are maybe through 1% projects, because I know the States works that way and call for art entries. And just, so I'm wondering, further past that, like how you all fund your work. You know, Alcide, you travel all over the world, you paint different pieces in different countries. You know, how do you get that out there? I know that Christo, when he does his work in public things, they sell their drawings to fund the works. How do you all do that? How do you get your pieces in City Walk and have them funded? You talked about how people move together and you have sponsorship and things like that. So I'm just wondering how each of you get your pieces out there. You know, as an artist who wants to make public artwork and you walk through spaces and go, wow, this would be a great place to make something. How does a regular, you know, an everyday artist who's not working on a big, larger world platform get out there and get funded, in your opinion?
Thank you for your question.
I think that's a really
That's
nice
a very
question.
good question, exactly. Who would like to answer first? Zainab?
I would share my thoughts. I think it starts with a community in the beginning where you're connected with different people who are from the creative background, but not necessarily only artists, but people who would like to help in the creative and design and art scene. So I think it started off like places. I would definitely give a lot of credit to where I started, which was in Tashkil. Tashkil is an art hub located in Nad al-Shiba, and the founder of Tashkil is an artist. And she also sponsors a lot of those sort of projects, like myself and Seed here. We're both members in the same art hub studios. Again, I always relate my my art career shifting into this what I would see today by also being in the right place at the right time, which is we could see all of the art institutions, the foundations, the Arts and Culture Authority, and them realizing how important it is to sponsor and fund artists. And of course, it's also a lot of your own hard work that proves yourself and then proves your portfolio that could actually get you into sort of like that trust when you have a certain project in mind to propose it to those sort of direction and places for them to. So sometimes they approach you for a certain project, and other times I approach them for a certain project. But again, I think Seed mentioned how they take a lot of time to actually happen and take place. So it's because again, so many people are involved in this. So I think we're kind of creating a really nice foundation for those sort of fundings and sponsorship. And the more aware people are of this, of engaging more similar projects, the more we can get more support on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say my model, but the way I work is I do commission project, for example. So I got I'm commissioned to create big mural, and then I use this money to finance my own personal project. So Manshiyat Nasser was like that. I do canvases and sculpture as well, and I want to thank Salama Foundation for the first show in sculpture we did in Tashkil 2 years ago exactly. The opening was 2 years ago at this day. And so this is what I do. I sell like art piece, I do commission mural or installation, and then I use this money to finance my own personal project. Because sometimes I don't want to get having people involved. Because, you know, sometimes you just, for example, Manshiyat Nasser, I just wanted to keep it discreet. So for over a year, like only few people knew about it. And that's the best, actually, the best way to do it, I think, on my perspective, you know, like to having this kind of surprise effect at the end.
What about you, Ralph?
Quick answer is that most of my commissions are percent for art, that is governmental commissions on different levels. It can be a city or it could be a national commission. But in the 80s, I was showing in galleries and museums, and I got a couple lucky breaks, you know, as Anib said, the right person at the right time, and that kind of helped solve the catch-22 dilemma, right? They want somebody with experience, but you know, how do you get your first, your first commission? So it's kind of snowballed from there, very fortunately. I would say at least half the commissions I work on now are by invitation. Somebody just calls me up. And that's really fun. Yeah.
And I think that it's important to kind of, and just to elaborate on what each one of the artists said, is that, you know, within the arts ecosystem, there are many different players who contribute to this art scene. And, you know, artists kind of don't function in a vacuum. You've got patrons of arts, and you've got different galleries, and you've got the community as well. So I think that by these different players that make up the arts ecosystem overall, you get people interested in saying, you know what, this artist and the concepts that they have to convey is worth that investment and worth that support, and kind of that's one way of it happening. But with that, I would like to close this talk and thank you all for joining us, and thank Seed, Zainab Al Hashmi, and Ralph Helmick for sharing with us your work. And if any of you would like to know more about our talks and about Muntada, please visit our website, www.shf.ae. And I hope to see you again at our next programs. Thanks a lot and have a good night.
Thank you.